now, and the event begins now. Welcome to the ACM Cyber Resume Workshop. Hi, I'm Rahil. I am the content lead for ACM Cyber, and I have with me today, Mr. Jonathan Wyatt. You can introduce yourself.
Hey, John Wyatt. I'm a red team lead at Viasat. Good to meet everybody.
And yeah, so let's just get started really quickly. So throughout this workshop, we're just going to go over a couple of things about how to build a resume, what do you want to have in it, what's not as important, and just a couple of tips with just so that you know how to get a job in the cybersecurity space. So what's good to have in a resume? Why is it good to have a resume? It's one of the most important, it's one of the most common ways to apply to jobs and internships. It's good for collecting and organizing information about yourself, which can help you with planning for interviews. And it shows off in a concise way that is easy for recruiters to read. Obviously, people will have different things on their resumes, but generally, you'll have your personal information that you want to share with the company, and just a list of your education experiences that will be pertinent for that job opening. So what should I have on a cyber resume? Obviously, the best thing to have is going to be a cybersecurity workplace experience, but oftentimes that's really difficult to find, especially if you're looking for an intro job or like an internship or something. You're probably not going to have like cybersecurity workplace experience. So there's a couple other things that you can use. One being certifications. Certifications are one of the easiest ways for someone who has no experience to gain knowledge and be a little bit more appealing to recruiters. There's like some introductory certifications like the Security Plus one that we actually used to have a study group for here at ACM Cyber, and I think we're going to be starting it up again later this year. So getting like a Security Plus is like a really good way to have your foot in the door, and it's something really nice to put on your resume. Competing in CTFs or other cybersecurity-based competitions like CCDC are also another good thing that you can put if you're looking for a cybersecurity job. CTFs, like the offensive security competitions, are just one of the simple and easy ways that you can show recruiters that you have experience and knowledge in the cybersecurity space, and they're pretty fun to do as well. They also take no experience to get into. You can have no experience and just start competing in CTFs, and you can just gain some knowledge through that. So that's one way to do it. And then involvement in campus student organizations related to cyber. Obviously, at UCSD we have ACM Cyber. I don't think I know of any other cybersecurity organizations at our campus, but if there were, that's one way to do it. And then other technical computer competencies are very helpful for cybersecurity. So coding skills like Linux experience, for example, are two useful things. And as I was talking to John earlier today, oftentimes there's going to be a lot of people without cybersecurity degrees applying for cybersecurity jobs. So computer science is obviously a field with a lot of overlap. And if you have a lot of computer science skills, you can generally transfer a lot of them to the cybersecurity space. So how does a recruiter look at a resume? It's generally going to be really fast. I think I heard someone had a statistic that a majority of recruiters scan over a resume in like less than 10 seconds. They'll have like a couple of key things that they want to see, and if they see them, then that'll be like really exciting for them. They'll be like, okay, we can take a deeper look, and they put it in a good pile. And if they don't see anything that interests them in that first 10 seconds, they'll just throw it away. So how should you organize the resume? Some necessities are Like you need your name, phone number, email so they can contact you. You generally need education and work experience, but there's no one single proper way to organize a resume. You can have projects, extracurricular activities, competitions, certifications, technical skills, all as like different headings in a resume. And obviously, if you have a bunch of cool technical projects, you probably want to put that like closer to the top. Or if you're like really successful in competitions, that's probably going to be closer to the top of your resume. Obviously, it's different on depending on the different person. But yeah, for me personally, I have like competitions at the top because I've competed in a lot of CTFs and I did pretty well in them. Uh, but for someone who has less technical experience like that, maybe you want to highlight your certifications to show that this is how you were, well, the reason why you're good for the job. Uh, John, do you know what, do you have any recommendations on this?
Yeah, so some I've done hiring and I've like interacted with the recruiters as a hiring manager, but like usually the way the process works is like you, as a hiring manager, you put out, you know, a job requirement, and that's going to have where all of the requirements and preferences and all that stuff get developed. And that goes to the recruiter, and the recruiter will end up getting it advertised on the website through a process after it gets approved and everything. But the recruiter is usually like the first gatekeeper, and they usually don't really know much about the technical requirements or specifically the job because they deal with all of the job advertisements. But some places will have technical recruiters, but a lot of times you won't. But usually the recruiter will get with you and say, hey, what are you looking for as far as like resumes? And I'll highlight like the important things, and that'll be what they gauge. But there'll be things that are in the advertisement. So that's just kind of the process. But for um, a new grad hire, which is kind of how we classify things, like regular employees, new grad, and interns. For new grads and interns, like experience really isn't that big a deal. But yeah, things like projects, CTFs, um, whether they're school projects, research projects, like funded or unfunded through the school, or um, just stuff you do at home, just highlight those things.
Thanks. So yeah, uh, there's lots of cool things that you can be doing, and if you need to get started, I think we have another like CTF workshop that we're going to be going over on Thursday this week. So other miscellaneous tips we have. So obviously less fluff in your resume is better. Uh, it might be nice to pad it with cool things, but if you're just padding it with meaningless stuff, then that's definitely not going to be better. Um, Italics and bolding can also be used effectively. So if you want to highlight specific keywords or specific like ideas in your resume, you can use the italics or bolding. Um, and one way this is important is like if you have a project, right? You want to probably give a little bit of a description for it. And say I have a project where I built a website, and when I built this website, I used like some cool fancy like JavaScript library. I might want to use italics or bolding on like the specific technical libraries or something, uh, so that they kind of pop out in the description of this project. Uh, Something like that is just one way that you can like highlight specific keywords that a recruiter might be looking for, just to uh, place yourself like a little bit, create like differences between you and the field. Also, you want to tailor your resume for the job you are applying. So like if I'm applying to like a regular CTF company or a regular, sorry, cybersecurity company, maybe I'll put like CTFs on there. But if I was applying to like a company that has a background in like aerospace or something and they had a security internship, maybe I would put some other experience. Like for example, there was a CTF called Hackaset, in which you deal with like satellite. They had some like satellite software with it, and you were supposed to attempt to reverse engineer the satellite software. If I was to be applying to an aerospace company, that might be a lot more lucrative for that company. So obviously tailor your resume for the job you're applying. Think about like what that company is looking for, and even in the recruiting pages, so where you apply for your jobs, they will definitely have like, oh, this is what we're looking for, and you can change your resume a little bit to more aptly follow what they're looking for. Also, you want to sound confident and not cocky. Um, Obviously, sounding confident is good, but if you sound cocky, then no one will want to work with you, and that obviously doesn't bode well for your uh, prospects. And then finally, don't use very old information. Um, if I was my middle school baseball champion, right, for the state of California or something, that's obviously not going to be a very pertinent because I'm now like 20 years old and a college student, right? So, um, depending on how important or how pertinent your experience is to the job, you can still use it if it's a little bit old, but generally, like you don't want to really have stuff from high school still on your resume. Um, like if you are applying for a cybersecurity job and you had a cybersecurity internship at like a college when you were in like 11th grade or 12th grade, then maybe it's probably still going to be fine. But if it's like, oh, I volunteered at a hospital in 10th grade, you probably don't want that to be on your resume, at least as a college student. Uh, yeah, so those are a couple of miscellaneous tips. And now, because we do have a bit of an expert, because he did work in recruiting and he is a industry member in cybersecurity, if we have any questions for John, now would be the best time to ask.
Some things I will point out. So the most important thing that you want to keep in mind when you're writing a resume is like you want to keep in the front of your mind like the job that you're applying for and what they're looking for. And you want to put the most relevant things closer to the top because, like you said, they're only going to look at it for maybe 5 or 6 seconds. So you want to get all of that stuff on the top quarter of the page if you can. And yeah, and I actually had somebody who sent me a 15-page resume that went back to like the 1970s. So yeah, definitely don't do that ever. Just keep it to the bare essentials for that specific job is really what I would hammer home.
And then I had one question for you, which was, what do you think about the difference between like a CV and a resume? What is like the reason that I would have a resume over a CV or a CV over a resume? If you know.
So I would definitely have like a master resume or CV that has everything that you can pull from, just so you have that information handy and you don't have to try to remember what did I do when I was, at this job at this time. But most companies don't really care about the CV. They just want to know what you can do for them that they need. But if it's for, academia or a university lab that does like government contract work or a federal job wants a full CV of everything you've ever done. Um, so if you're applying for any kind of federal job, that's especially a cleared job, they're going to want that. So, but for like private sector companies, I wouldn't go past 5 years unless the job. So whatever the job experience level is, that's how far back you should go. So if it says 5 years experience, go back 5 years. If it says 3 years, go back 3 years. Try to keep it to one page as much as possible. But yeah, I would definitely have like a big full master resume of everything you've ever done just in case so that you can pick from that. Because I wrote a resume that went back 10 years and the company came back and said, well, you need to show 15 years of experience. So I had to go back in the Wayback Machine and find stuff that I had done that I don't even remember doing. So it's just stuff to keep in mind. This is
Yeah.
probably like a future you problem, but it's good tips to have.
How long was a 15-page resume or 15-year long resume?
I have 3 pages. I got it down to 3 pages.
Oh wow, that's impressive.
And I say like bare essentials, like so. Actually, do you mind if I take the screen real quick? I'll
Yeah,
show
for
you
sure.
kind of my approach.
Um, you should have permissions
Okay.
now.
All right. All right. I think I'm gonna break my cardinal rule and just share my desktop. Okay. So this is an example posting on Viasat. It's probably blinding you right now. Sorry, but it's very white. So you kind of have the job description, right, and what your responsibilities are, and then you have things like requirements. So if it's a government contractor or uh, anything like that, these requirements are going to be hard requirements. Like you have to meet these, and then preferences are kind of icing on the top. Private sector requirements can be hard or soft requirements. But what you want to do is you want to take every single one of these bullets, copy them out, paste them, in a Word document, and what have I done with regard to like this bullet point? And then you want to kind of build the bullet point around that. And you'll see keywords like familiar with, comfortable with, and then experience. So experience means you've actually done it and you have done it enough to be considered like experienced with it. You don't have to like feel like you're starting from scratch every time you do it. Comfortable with means you're not an expert, you don't have a lot of experience with it, but you can sit down and you can get it done. Familiar with and knowledge of, like, you don't really need hardcore experience with it or any at all. You just need to understand the concepts of it. So just keep those keywords in mind when you're looking at these. Like if it says, familiar with, doesn't mean you need to show like projects where you've done this with these languages. You just need to be able to demonstrate you understand what they are and you're familiar with how they work. Let's
So,
see.
would you say that like for something that says familiar with or comfortable with, that's more of a something you should worry about for like an interview rather than,
Yeah, you need to be able to talk to it, but you don't need to
but you
prove
don't
that
need
you
it to
have
prove it?
experience with it. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, these mean things. These words mean things, and they mean things to recruiters, and they mean things to hiring managers, especially for like government contractors and federal, because well, not maybe not federal, but government contractors then get audited on their hiring practices and how they hiring people, and if they're hiring people that don't meet these requirements, it's bad. Let's see. So what else? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. You want to tailor your resume around these things, and you want to use the same language and the same wording for all of these. And if it's something that you just have no idea what it is whatsoever, then don't claim that you know what it is, but definitely do research on it. So at the interview, you can kind of at least address it as a knowledge gap. And so, yeah, when you're organizing your resume, you definitely want a strong introduction that is related to the job description and kind of what your expectations are as well, because it's a two-way street. You want to put your skills that meet that job posting up at the top, and skills are things you have experience with. And then you later down, you want to put your work history or projects you work on or organizations that you're involved with. And the thing that you want to focus there is impact that you had. Nobody really cares what your responsibilities were. They want to know what your impact was. So that's what you want to kind of focus on when it comes to your work history. And you want to focus on things that are directly relevant to this job posting, and then things that are kind of adjacent to or indirectly related to it towards the bottom, because hiring managers will read your whole resume. Recruiters will not. So you definitely want to have that stuff on there when it gets to a hiring manager so that they can, build the interview and decide whether or not they want to interview you.
Yeah, so I've heard
Um,
a lot of times with interviews, they will take like a resume and they'll just go down by point and just ask you to speak on it. Um,
yeah, mine are more conversational, and I'll focus more on like the introduction and the job and like what the job is and whether or not you're actually interested in the job and whether or not it's a good fit for you. Because if it's not, then like if you find that out, 6 months into the job and you leave, that's bad for everybody. So those are the kind of things. Because like the resume just gets you the interview, and the interview pretty much determines whether or not people want to work with you and if you want to work with them. So and then just kind of validate the resume. But I don't really use the resume as um, like a point by point questionnaire, because ideally that stuff would already be in the resume. So my conversation more is like about the work and like if you want to do the work and to answer questions and like get to know you as a person and like interests and stuff like that. So
so then, what would you say is like one thing that if you see it on a resume will instantly like turn you off from an applicant?
well, I mean, if you send me a 15-page resume that's like everything you've ever done, I probably won't even read it. Um, if it's a bunch of responsibilities with nothing that actually says whether or not you're proficient, I probably will get turned off by that. Um, yeah, that's pretty much. And if you put things in there that you just, and then I ask you questions and you have no idea what it is, then
Yeah.
that'll be an issue too. But yeah, definitely don't put things in there that don't meet like the wording requirements. Like if you're familiar with something but you've never actually built, like if you've never built something using, um, what's a good example here? Ruby. If you never built like a Metasploit module in Ruby on Rails or whatever, I don't care. I just need you to understand that, what Ruby is and that Metasploit modules are written in Ruby and stuff like that. I don't need you to show me that you've got like 10 years experience in a 5-year language,
I see. So I've seen a lot of resumes that will have like one line at the right under their education, and it'll say like technical skills. And generally, like for a lot of jobs, they'll just list off a lot of the things that are in like this requirement section. Like they'll say technical skills, Python, MySQL, Ruby, Bash, etc. They'll just have a bunch of these things. Do you think that's like a good way of including them into your resume, or do you think it would be better to have them like more subtly?
I would say definitely put them up towards the top because that's going to be what a recruiter's looking for. And but don't just copy and paste all of the things and put them at the top. Like if it meets this experience with and you can talk to it and show and address what you've done with that skill, put it at the top. If you can't, I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
Because you're going to open a door where you're just going to, have to get real uncomfortable. But yeah, definitely put skills towards the top. And you definitely want to put major accomplishments like either in your introductory paragraph or at the very top of your work history. And it's going to be like basically your highlight reel, all the great stuff you've done. Like taking first place in CTF or, um, you know, being a major contributor to a project, like a funded research project or something like that.
And then one last question: what do you think about when you see like research, like college research? Do you think that's like a good like a good example of experience, or do you think that like an internship or something would be like more valuable?
Um, I don't, I don't know. So I think that it's case by case, right? Because I've seen internships where you just show up and they don't know what to do with you, so you just sit around and just do busy work. So that to me is just like they just wasted your time, and I wouldn't. You can address that on the resume, but if you didn't really have any impact, I mean, impact's hard with an internship because you're not supposed to make the money unless you're getting paid and stuff like that. So, um, and even if you're getting paid, there's like all kinds of rules. But So that's kind of difficult, but usually, at least the way we do it, like we treat our internships almost exactly like a funded research project would work. Like you
I
come
see.
in, like, what do you think you could do, with a lab, and or we can say, hey, this is something that we want to know is possible or has a proof of concept. We just haven't had time to put any kind of effort into it. And so you'll go and you'll do that. And that's basically us funding a research project for you.
Mhm.
So it all comes down to, what did you do? What did you accomplish? You know, and those, I think, accomplishments would trump impact, because impact is gonna, so like with a research project, you can have impact to the community, but on an internship, it just depends, on what the internship is.
Yeah. So I think what I'm taking away from this is like accomplishments are greater than impact, which is greater than pretty much everything else.
Yes, unless it's outside of research, yeah.
Okay.
Impact can trump everything, even in research. It just depends on the situation.
Okay.
But if you did a research project and you answered a lot of good questions that didn't lead to a major impact, that's fine. But if it did, that's really important.
I see. Okay. Well, that's all the questions I had for you. Is there anything anyone else has? Or any other miscellaneous things that you wanted to talk about?
And nothing comes to mind on my side.
Okay. Um, well, I will stop the recording there then, I guess, if no one else has anything to say. Thanks for coming to the workshop.